discussed between unofficial partner and Sporticast that we want to take a global view on topics, and that is what we're going to do today. So, Richard, introduce yourself to the Sporticast audience and take it away.
Who could that middleman be? That's the question that everyone is.
Oh, we don't speak his name on
Man,
this
his
show.
name
His
is
ego's
not
big enough.
yeah.
He dresses in bright colors. Yeah, we don't Well, I'll tell you this. He has a very ordinary American name, and yet when he picks up his Starbucks order, when he leaves a name, they start screaming, "Sven, Sven!" So that is perfect. So he'll know, but we did not tell him. I can't wait until he hears this episode. Says, "Oh my God, they did it! They actually did it!" So good for us.
Yeah, so that's a nice way in. So unofficial partner is the business of sport, and it's what you do, but we do it in London, in the UK, and we do it covering sort of all the places you would expect: Premier League, cricket, football, rugby, and across Europe as well. So we've been going 6 years, 450 odd podcasts. It's still fun. Can you believe that?
Yes, because you do it, on a solo, but I got Novi Williams to laugh at every time. So, this makes it easy for me, and especially since he had the baby, he's only 60% mentally there. So this is really fun for me now.
What day is it right now? I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly. How many? But you said 450. Eben, you said to me recently that we were closing in on 500. So about
I
the
was
same.
about to say we are almost exactly. So since Scott and I started doing the Sporticast, not counting the Bloomberg episodes, we're at 440, 442, something like that. So we're right there. Combined 1,000 games of experience. Look at that.
Yeah, getting the reps in.
Yeah, and by the way, Richard, you mentioned the English Premier League, or is that a business? I just thought it was soccer. I thought they were playing games. The EPL is a business. This is new to me. Tell me and give me the 1 minute, 30,000 foot view of the EPL as a business.
It's not doing bad, although it's on. Had a few stories recently, but yeah, no, it's definitely busy. You should check it out, you guys. That's one of the reasons I was talking to you about through the mystery intermediary. Was quite often I see UK stories, Premier League stories, Champions League, UEFA, football stuff, rugby, cricket in America, and you hear the sound over here, and then when you see it transposed over there, it sort of is quite an interesting filter. And I'm guessing it's the same the other way, in that when we're about to talk about the NBA, and obviously I've got a sort of an idea of the NBA. I'm not embedded in the culture, and the NFL likewise. Every September, the NFL comes over, says they're going to start on a London team. That's it's almost a hardy perennial. They come over, it's about sort of autumn time, fall, and it's London. It's a London franchise conversation for 3 weeks.
Well, I will tell you though.
Jaguars right there.
Yeah, let me give you a little historical context from this side of the pond. That it was the same conversation with the NFL at the Super Bowl when Roger Goodell did his press conference for, I would say, 15 years on Los Angeles is going to get a team. When is Los Angeles getting a team? It's the open market. And then, alas, one day, it was. They actually not put one team in LA. They put 2 teams in LA. So I would say keep on that story. Eventually, Shad Khan. Ooh, did I say that out loud? Eventually. And by the way, Eben is a Jaguars fan, so I hope I don't hurt his feelings
One
there.
of 2 in America.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You and Asher, your pal. Eventually, the day will come where they will actually do that, and you'll I remember when this was all talk.
Well, it's sort of interesting in terms of whether the basis of those sorts of decisions and what they're based on, whether it's the sort of the stadium, what the stadia looks like, it's a full stadia. It's a different game, as we all know, building team brands, tribes in a local market. And I think it's really quite interesting. We're in a moment at the moment which is fueled by money in every sport. There's a live golf coming for every sport. And it's powered by the same sort of McKinsey PowerPoint deck. It's you can sort of tick the boxes. There's a bit of McKinsey bingo where you just say, right, okay, it's private equity, it's franchises, it's global, not local. And there's a running assumption that at some point someone will think about the marketing to the fans, and the fans will just be, brought into the equation. They'll be shipped in for the TV cameras. And I just think, I think there's a number of flaws in the way that the money thinks about sport. And I think it's sometimes, some of these things can work individually, like whether it's a European NBA league, whether it's an NFL London franchise, whether it's a Live Golf or a paddle global franchise tournament or whatever it is, on their own, I think a lot of them make sense. And I can get there intellectually and say, okay, yeah, I understand. But collectively, they're all going for the same fan, it seems to me. And there's a sort of idealized marketing deck somewhere where they're targeting a global sports fan, and they're crossing their fingers and hoping that those two, the product and the market fit in some way.
I think you're right. And every sport has its own kind of calculus when it looks overseas. So from American sports looking at Europe, there are sports like the NBA that are very popular as a participation sport in many markets in Europe. And then you have leagues like the NFL, not a sport that is incredibly popular participation wise in Europe. And as a result, you see different strategies, I think, a little bit. Sure, every league goes over and plays games in London or in Paris or in Germany. But I do think, and we can transition this to the NBA specifically, but I think the way that your league and the Premier League has a benefit of being a sport that's played popular literally everywhere on the planet, right? So it depending on whether there are kids playing your game, whether most people know your game inherently, rules wise, and how to watch it, I do think it changes the strategy a bit for leagues as they look at international markets.
I think the NFL learned the lesson rather quickly, though, Eben, that NFL Europe or whatever it may have been, a reasonable facsimile of the game ain't going to sell. That is not what the fans wanted. You got to send the best. You got to send the real deal, the real product. They want to see the Dallas Cowboys. They want to see the Jaguars, which is almost an NFL team. They want to send the Giants. That's what they want to see. At least the real uniforms, the real logos, and the real deal.
And I'm not convinced we get an NFL London franchise soon. It's certainly something the league has looked at, but I think Mexico has a potential to happen sooner. Politically, it's a little bit dicey right now, but there are so many challenges with. It's easier in some ways to create your own league and have it be its own ecosystem overseas than it is to put one team a 6-hour flight away. And
the other bit to it,
the time changes, etc.
Sorry, Evan, to interrupt, but the other bit
I love people that interrupt, Eben. This is great. This is perfect. Now we have two. There's two of us. Yes.
I think the other bit to it is the sort of there is a sort of loss of sort of the exotic. It's sort of sometimes international sport, and my experience with the NFL, and I'm old enough to remember when it was, it became a big thing in the 80s and 90s in UK television, but it was niche and it was exotic and it was a story that you shared with your mates. It was, and the NFL can't do niche. It's the big of the big. So, and the NBA likewise. It's culturally much more relevant than the NFL. I agree with you. And it's played in schools, and it's across Europe. It's a proper sport with a proper fan base potentially. But there is something about the NBA brand, which is one, very American. Two, it's really exciting, but it's in the middle of the night. I don't know what the numbers are on, but they're tiny in terms of the live audience, but it's a clip sport. So it's a sport that I can, people consume TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, plus the cultural references. So there's a sort of spread of stuff, which is almost like it's there already. Formula One is going the other way in the States. It's sort of turned into a sport that people will consume in short clips, but it will also do a lot of that sport as entertainment, sport in the culture work that I think is really interesting. And all sport, the big sports are now doing. But I wonder if actually people prefer the NBA at a distance. I remember when the Fridge came over and I remember interviewing it, and it was like, and they turned out on Wembley. It was really lazy and slack, and they were just like really just going through the motions. And we're not idiots. We like the NFL, but come on. And it's the same. I wonder about the NBA, just the sheer distance. I also wonder about it the other way around, by the way, in terms of, we've got UEFA talking about, early round Champions League or a Champions League final in the States. Big moment in the last few weeks where Relevant Sports has taken the UEFA rights. The story then now rumbles that is going to lead to a real America, games, UEFA games in the States. Now, I just don't know whether it's the same the other way around. What will happen at the other end when, Liverpool and Bayern Munich?
Now, there's a passion for the real thing, Richard. It can't be an exhibition. The exhibition day has gone and passed. I took my son, and I use him as my focus group, he and his pals. I took him several years ago to the Copa final at MetLife. Argentina and Chile. And man, that place was packed. It was an event. It was the place to go. It was the place to be seen. It was the place nowadays. It'd be the social component of it. Like make sure everybody knows you're there because it's more important for everybody to know you're there than you're actually there watching the game. He learned a whole lot of really bad words in Spanish that he continues to use to this day. It was a memory for him. And I think the real deal, whether it be Champions League or big brand teams coming to play games that matter, will resonate with the U.S. audience. They are in on that.
And culturally, I mean, there's obviously a difference between European league structure and American league structure. The particularly in soccer, the way that tradition and fan and community and certainly the vibes at games are very different. If there is an NBA game, obviously we're NBA league in Europe, we're starting from scratch from an IP perspective. Largely, the NBA is a brand, but these teams won't have any IP.
That's the opportunity. Create an own IP. That's the opportunity.
Sure. So if the NBA is going to build a league in Europe, does it look more like an American league just transplanted into Europe, or does it look more like EuroLeague and European soccer, which obviously have a very different kind of vibe and feel and cultural significance? Yeah. And that's a question that I think the NBA does have to answer is when we do this, we've seen how American owners are treated in European soccer, for example. Does it look uniquely American with all of kind of the trappings, good and bad, of American sports, or does it look more like trying to build something that is culturally and uniquely European, just with American NBA IP? And I know owners have thought about that. Yeah.
It's a really interesting point. And I think that the solution that they appear to have been, that they're looking at, and your story that that provoked this podcast, it appears that they're looking at a sort of interesting hybrid of the, answer to that question in terms of there are some spots that, so they, and again, looking at it through the lens of from the money side of it, you think actually, okay, so there is the franchise game, create IP, build IP. We've just had the 100 franchises in cricket over here, just blown the ceiling off of Indian money coming into cricket. It's changed everything. And so there is that has created a lot of excitement. So you've got in London this moment, we're in an interesting moment from that perspective. But you've got I think there is a mismatch between how you would perceive a European glamour basketball league and where the fans are. Because I think it's not London, Paris, Rome. It is Madrid,
Serbia,
but it's Serbia, Greece, Turkey, Southeastern Europe, and they are absolutely, they are some of the most, let's call them passionate, but they are real sports fans, real European sports fans, and that comes with a whole load of baggage. They are also not the most glamorous spots in Europe. So if you are looking to build a media sport entertainment product, do you do it with, and they are saying, right, okay, they might want Real Madrid in there. Now, Real Madrid, why is Real Madrid a basketball team? We know it as a global football team. It's a basketball team because it's popular, it broadens the brand, but it's culturally embedded into the club. The other bit to it is that they have quite a lot of control over the EuroLeague. So they enjoy that aspect of it. Now, whether or not they'll enjoy working under the banner of the NBA and the centralized way in which, things are done there, culturally it's different. And we all know, we keep bumping into this question of American versus European structures. And it's really hard because you then get into really boring stuff about restraint of trade. You try and get a salary cap in there. You try and get other sort of elements that are part and parcel of the American league structure. The draft, for example, and you bump into EU bureaucracy, and it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, it didn't take long, by the way, for the big boys of Europe, the PSGs of the world, and to come out and say, well, yes, we've been approached by the NBA and we are showing interest. We'd like to look at this. Like, that did not take sort of, a true crime detective stalwart to get to that. And Eben and I hinted in the story, the fact that Adam Silver, we're told, would prefer that NBA owners not own these franchises. So then, of course, you sort of look around the globe and you said, let's go with some of those McKinsey buzzwords: sovereign wealth, private equity. Of course, you get your rich person who just wants to do this. So I'm curious, from your take, what's the European take on that the American owners would not be part of this, or at least non-NBA owners. You could bring another American group. It just
exactly.
would not be somebody affiliated with the NBA right now.
Well, I think there's a brand and product question. I think in terms of is it a labeling of a European league with the NBA, and I can see all of the benefits of that. Again, culturally, it talks well. I don't know. I don't think we yet know what the substance is below the bonnet. Now, in terms of, I can't speak for the appetite for a London franchise is an example. If you take that as a good example, the UK, British Basketball League and the London have just been through the 777, private equity shenanigans, So there probably ain't much appetite there for if another private equity guy comes along and says, look, okay, I'm a savior here. I can create a piece of IP. I can generate. They've had that story in the last 3 years. But the whole point of 777 being in basketball in England was that they saw an opportunity, and we had them on the podcast 3 years ago where they were talking, this is what it is, and this is why we're doing it, and it all makes logical sense. And you can sort of start to see that actually, yeah, I can get there in terms of if it's done properly, and it taps into, is this a British team, or like, is it a Serbian team? Is it a Greek team? Is it a Turkish team? In which case, you can really sense, okay, if you're adding a nationalist flavour to these things, well, that's a whole different thing. But is that what we're talking about here, or are we talking about superstar players, franchises, which tend to be, from our perspective, quite a cold conversation? It's like feels much more of a transactional thing where you are sort of drafting people in every year. The owners can say, right, sod it, we're going to go to Paris now because Greece ain't paying us enough.
Another interesting aspect of this to me that I know has come up in NBA conversations is about talent and where talent moves if this league exists. And the NBA has the NBA, obviously, and I can't imagine this is an NBA Europe would pull talent from the NBA. But there's G League teams, so every NBA owner or most NBA owners own their own development team here in the U.S. Does NBA Europe become a potential spot that pulls talent away from that? Does it pull talent from the NBL? Does it pull talent from the Euro League? There's a number of different pools here. And another thing that we should discuss is the labor laws, right? Which are very different in Europe than they are in the U.S. The NBA has a salary cap in a way that is not going to exist almost certainly because of local laws in NBA Europe. And as a result, you have a potentially weird dynamic where you can get paid more to play in NBA Europe than you can get paid to play in the NBA regular. And I do think there's some interesting conversations here about the various ways in which salary cap structure and payments, the way that this league is going to be structured relative to its bigger cousin, obviously, the NBA itself.
Yeah, what's the argument that Adam Silver is putting to the team owners? What's in it for them? It's just more money, bigger funnel, more money at the top.
Well, the one is your franchise
money,
fee,
not short-term money.
Yeah, but you would get your franchise, whether it's between $500 million and $1 billion times 10. Obviously, the NBA owners will own 50% of the league. That's what our reporting showed. They will never be diluted. That would come, if you want to add more franchise, that would go to the franchisees, that dilution. So you're putting a lump sum in your pocket right away. And if you do believe in the brand power, the global brand power, and this is David Stern's grand vision coming to life, of that little logo and the sponsors that will want to attach themselves to that logo, regardless of geography. Does it amplify every social post? You are talking about the initial capital right in your pocket, and then, of course, a growing of the pie, ad infinitum, if you will, because that brand is so damn strong.
Yeah, there's the way a lot of American leagues now are thinking about a lot of their investments are owned and operated, right? The NFL is so instrumental in the sport of American football being popular around the world, and it wants to share in the economics of every little piece of that if possible. And I think the NBA looks at it the same way. There's so much talent coming out of Europe now. A lot of that is coming through areas that the NBA does not share in the economics in. And they're thinking, hey, if we're instrumental in making basketball a global multi-billion-dollar sport, we want to have our hands in as many of the jars as possible in various stages in that development. So,
guys, very simple branding. Ready? NBA China. NBA Africa. The diaspora of Jerry West logo is not new, but I mean, we talked about being culture of the game. At least there is a great culture of the game throughout Europe. Whether, Richard, it is that sort of that tribal mentality of that London will take the that sort of feel, and Paris will be a whole different thing than Olympiacos. I don't know, but having attended and watched the international game in places like Istanbul and Indianapolis, by the way, man, oh man, I can tell you the culture of the game in Europe is far better than anything I have seen in arena here in the United States.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a case study of a league that has successfully done this and sustained this over time. I get it that, there are going to be great moments you can create in a stadium. And I just think that's different than building a sustainable club or franchise in a city over a 10, 20, 30-year period. I just waiting. The IPL are doing something similar. They're taking a great tournament and trying to then expand. And, it might work, but I don't see a finished article as yet. It might just be that's where we are in the process. But I just think there are quite a lot of real world barriers that get in the way. We all love the disruption conversation because it's it moves it forward but actually I don't like the idea of revolutionaries running government. I think, there's a sort of campaigning aspect to it. There's an excitement to it. Change is good. No one wants to vote for the status quo, but actually Live Golf has told us that you sort of end up bumping into some of a lot of the same problems that you were there to try and solve initially.
And I love, by the way, I love the fact that my longtime friend Scott O'Neill, friend of the program, friend of Sportico, is now running Live. By the way, comes from a background of running team and business operations at the NBA, has been at Madison Square Garden, has been with Harris Blitzer running Devils Sixers. So coming from that world to now being on the disruption side, to saying, wait a minute, how do we work? How do we coalesce with the existing? I'm not sure where we are, where we're going, but I'm sure interested to watch the trip.
And Richard, to answer your question about has anyone done this before, I think NBA owners would point to NBA Africa. Obviously a very different situation, smaller scale, and say that is the model, and it has been, from a talent perspective, bringing basketball talent from Africa to the NBA. They would argue that it has been a tremendous success. And has it been overall profitable from a dollar and cents perspective? Probably not. But the BAL is up and running. It's in year 4 or 5 or whatever it is. I think the NBA would look at that and say, that's the thing. It's a league. It's got our branding. It is helping bring more talented players from an area that was under resourced before, and bringing those people over to the NBA. So in my sense, I think the success they've had in Africa breeds that. I also want to say, and you'll laugh at this, Richard, because Scott brought up Olympiacos. So in that story, we mentioned 2 teams in the EuroLeague. We mentioned Real Madrid and Olympiacos. I had so many people on Twitter or call me to mention that we mentioned the wrong Greek team. That in European basketball world, Panathinaikos is obviously a much bigger brand and is a much more popular team. So I thought that was funny, talking about the cultural divides here. As 2 Americans who don't follow EuroLeague that closely, we're looking for just a good example, and we ended up choosing the wrong Greek team.
I mean, just on the African League, it's interesting because I can see development leagues, but again, it's one of the if the rationale and the whole point of it is to feed players talent into the NBA. That's a different conversation. I just don't see that as a great calling card if you're going to come to Europe and say, right, we're going to do away. We're going to compete against the EuroLeague, which is its own thing. It's its identity, and people are playing there for its own reason, and it's not a stepping stone. And that's I think that's a problem. Because it's the African thing is really interesting in and of itself, but I think the NBA
would say they're trying to do both. That they're trying to both be a talent pipeline and also be a commercial enterprise that stands on its own in Europe as well.
One of the things I was wondering about when I read your story was the timing of it. Why now? And because it's only been a few weeks since. I mean, I was sort of reading about Maverick Carter and LeBron James and a global league, and so. I don't know how many global franchise basketball leagues we can take at the moment, but is this just is this a response to that, or is that irrelevant?
No, this has been in the works for some time.
Years.
This has been in the works for some time, and frankly, I'm not sure the NBA wanted us to write this story, and like they weren't prepared for this to be public yet, as they were just introducing sort of the structure of the proposal to the owners, who must now decide whether they want to actually approve the plan to go and do it. This is what it would look like. That's it. Now they have to decide, do we have our folks out there trying to implement this plan? Do we go raise money? Do we go look for bidders on franchises? Do we go look at arenas? And that's again, the McKinseyan part of it for me. When I look at buckets of these professional sports teams and what these platform companies are, there's tech, there's real estate, there's media, there's incubators. Like these, I think if you look at those, will the streamers be interested? Yeah. I think some of the regular broadcasters would be. Yeah. Is this a real estate play with concerts and that? Yeah, it is. Is there incubation possibility? Yeah, there is. I just think there's too much to ignore for the capital. As you know as well as I do, Richard, there is this thirst of capital out there for sport. Not only sport, for anything sport and sport adjacent. Yeah. So, I mean, if you've got a dominant brand like this and all those adjacencies, how does that capital say no?
And one other thing on the timing, the NBA has a new long-term labor piece, new collective bargain agreement, and they have their media deals locked in. And if those are the two things that take up the vast majority of your manpower and brain power and priorities, once leagues get those two things locked up, and for 10 years, 6 years, whatever it is, then that's the period when they start thinking about things.
Yeah, now what? Now what?
So the NBA does have peace on the two major business initiatives that it always has to deal with in constant cycles. And once those are locked up, then you can think about expansion, which is a conversation here in the NBA right now about when and if they're going to add 2 more teams. And then you also have more bandwidth, I think, for people to say, okay, what are the tier 2 priorities? Oh, that European thing. Let's take a look at that and figure out if now's the time.
Richard, I have a great idea. If you want instant interest and buzz on this league, okay, ready? We're up and running. Here's our first game. You ready for this? Every point scored, because it's the EuroLeague, but you can have Americans. Every point scored by an American player, the team is assessed a tariff. What do you think? Huh?
25% on top.
Yeah, on every point. Yes, it's I don't know what the multiplier is, but there's a tariff by every point scored by an American player. I love this.
It's a winner in Trump's America.
Oh, that would be too easy. Richard, give me your parting shot. I'm so happy we did this. We will do more. I'm going to put it on vote on Twitter. Who would rather just get rid of Eben and bring you in? I think it'll be high. I think we'll do well.
In that poll too, Scott. Yeah.
No. I'm doing the poll, my friend. That's the genius of doing it.
This sounds like a domestic that I don't need to get. I have enough of those on my own. You don't need me in that.
So give us your parting thoughts, Richard, on sort of just all right, just when you saw it, what the reaction is, just general sport business view of American sport from your side of the pond.
I thought it was the bit that caught my eye was that it is the NBA thinking about this, and I think there's a theme running back to where this is front of mind for me because we're doing a thing at the Olympic Museum in Lausanne in a few weeks in front of a load of international federations, governing bodies, and the message is disrupt or be disrupted, and it's really hard to do it from within. We've had a case study here where the ECB Cricket Board has done it with the 100. It's really rare. It's the sort of it's the PGA Tour trying to innovate before Liv gets to you. So I think that part of it is really at the front of minds across all of the front offices of sport. And I think that, that the fact that the NBA is looking at this is really interesting because I think they'll do it before it gets done to them or someone else will do it.
Well, this was fun, Richard. Thank you very much. We will do this again. He is Richard Gillis.
This is where, by the way, Richard, if you listen to our show, we just talk over Eben here. We don't care.
You can find them
we
on
see if it throws them off. Sometimes it does.
You and no other
he's gotten pretty much cruise control on the close. Yeah, but there we
Scott
got him. We
Searcy,
got
you
him.
can find him on Twitter at Seismic. I am Evan Novi Williams. Find
Yeah,
me on
yeah,
Twitter
yeah.
at
There he
Novi
goes.
_Williams.
By the way, his hair looks terrible today. The
Justin
parts in the middle, it's like a
produces the
inverted
show.
flying
Thank
W.
you very much to
There
Go
is a
Justin.
check
bit
your
of
hair in
That's
the
why
mirror
I
when
see-
you're done, Eben. This does
There's
not
some
look
Sportico
good.
early,
social and digital
early
media
Hugh Grant
would like
work
you to
going
know
on there.
Yes.
that you can follow the show at
Yes.
Sporticast.
There you go.
The hub of these
I'm
sports
just a
Pro-
girl
just
standing
media
before a boy asking him to
network.
love her.
It was the sort of
That was a
yeah.
tough one. That was a hard one. I heard Hugh Grant there. I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right, though, Scott. Hair does not look good today.
Doesn't look good today. I'm
Does not
sorry.
look good at all.
No, you know, you got to take the bad days. You know, you have many good days. I mean, I got this. This is not anything good for me. My days are long gone. But oh well. All right,
Alrighty.
Richard. Thank you so much, my friend.
Looking
This
forward
will
to the next one.
this
Cheers.
will hit on Tuesday morning.
Perfect.
All right, we'll promote it on our end. And we absolutely let's talk about how we can do this more often.
Yeah. It's
Great.
easy.
And let's talk sport business at some point too. I'm
Yep.
curious
Yeah,
to
that's
hear
true.
your thoughts.
Yeah, I want to connect
No,
on that.
give me a shout on that. I've got a few things on that.
Okay.
Great.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right, let me save this here because I never know what day it is. Podcast.